Marcus is standing at the edge of his driveway on a Tuesday evening, watching the sprinkler make its slow arc across the grass. He's still got his work boots on, his arms crossed, more out of habit than mood. The street is quiet. A lawn mower 2 houses down, a dog barking once and giving up, the hiss of water hitting pavement every few seconds when the sprinkler overshoots the lawn. He does this most evenings, before he even goes inside to change. Doesn't check his phone, doesn't wave first at the cars that pass, mostly because none of them wave first either. A kid on a bike slows down near his mailbox, glances over and pedals a little faster than before. Marcus doesn't notice, or maybe he does, and it's been happening long enough that it doesn't register as anything new. From the outside, a scene like this is easy to read. A big, quiet man standing alone in his driveway, arms folded, not smiling at anyone. People make up their minds about a man like that fast, unapproachable, serious, maybe even a little intimidating, the kind of presence that makes a stranger switch which side of the sidewalk they walk on. At work, people tend to over-explain simple things to him, like he might take offense if they don't. New neighbors take a few extra weeks to start waving back. Somebody, somewhere, has probably described him as intense and meant it as a warning, not a compliment. But that read might be missing something. The world sees intimidation. What it might actually be looking at is exhaustion, the kind that comes from spending 30-some years being careful about how you land in a room. What looks like coldness from a distance can be something closer to armor, an armor put on so early in a person's life that they stop remembering they're wearing it at all. And this isn't some abstract idea. You know somebody like this. Maybe it's your uncle, the one who goes quiet at family gatherings until someone he trusts speaks first, and only then does the humor come out. Maybe it's a coworker who never raises his voice, and somehow the whole room still straightens up a little when he walks in. Maybe it's the neighbor whose good morning catches you off guard every time, because you weren't expecting that much warmth from a man who looks, at first glance, like he doesn't hand it out for free. If you actually want to understand a man like this, watching how he moves through a room full of strangers won't tell you much. You have to see what he does when nobody's asking him to manage anything. At home, Marcus keeps the volume low. Old soul records most nights. Sometimes nothing at all, just the sound of his own kitchen. There's a chair nobody else sits in, not because he'd ever say something, but because everyone in his life just learned. His evenings run on a rhythm only he set, down to the order he does things in. His phone stays on silent, by choice, not neglect. Nothing in that house asks him to prove anything to anyone. No one flinches when he walks past. No one grips their bag a little tighter. It isn't luxury exactly. It's just the one place left where the math isn't required anymore. If any of that sounds familiar, either as the person being described or as someone who loves a man like this, stay with me, because it's about to make a lot more sense. Because that still leaves the real question. Why does this kind of quiet, private control matter so much to a man like Marcus? Where does the instinct come from to take up so little space emotionally, while somehow still being read as a lot? To understand that, you have to go back, before the driveway, before the house, back to a childhood that shaped a lot of black men of his generation, kids raised by parents who'd come under a version of America that hadn't finished deciding whether they were fully welcome in it. A lot of these households ran on 2 working parents or one stretched impossibly thin, which meant a lot of these kids let themselves in after school, made their own dinner, learned early how to read a room because nobody was always there to read it for them. Somewhere along the way, usually well before anyone sat them down to explain why, they picked up the rule anyway. Don't give anyone a reason.
Don't be the one who makes people nervous. Watch your face. Watch your tone. Say, "Excuse me," like you mean it, every single time in every single store. In a lot of families, this wasn't said cruelly. It was said the way you'd warn a kid away from a hot stove, urgently, practically, because the world outside the front door wasn't always going to be fair to him, and the people who loved him needed him to come home safe more than they needed him to be free. And when you're taught that early enough, The lesson stops feeling like a lesson. It just becomes how you carry yourself. That's where the psychology starts to make sense. When a child learns that how he's perceived can affect his actual safety, his nervous system doesn't get the memo decades later that it's allowed to stand down. The self-monitoring that once kept him out of trouble, softening his voice, checking his expression, laughing a half-second late to see if it's safe to be the one who laughs first, doesn't switch off just because he grew up and got a mortgage and a lawn of his own to water. It becomes automatic, running quietly in the background of every room he enters. And from the outside, all that constant calibration doesn't look like effort. It looks like distance. People don't see a man working hard not to alarm anyone. They just see a man who seems hard to reach. And this isn't only something people describe from memory or feeling. Researchers who study perception and bias have found again and again that a neutral or serious expression is more likely to get read as angry or hostile on a black face than the exact same expression on a white one. Which means some of what gets labeled intimidating was never really about what the man was doing with his face in the first place. Separately, researchers who study how adults perceive children have found that black boys are frequently misjudged as older than they actually are and treated as less innocent, sometimes starting at an age when most kids are still just being kids. And people who study code switching, the constant quiet adjusting of voice, posture, and word choice depending on who's in the room, has found it carries a real mental and emotional cost, even when nobody around ever notices it's happening. Put together, it starts to look less like one man's personality and more like a pattern a lot of men learned before they even had language for why it was necessary. Still, numbers can only tell you so much. They don't show you what any of this looks like on an ordinary Wednesday. They don't show you him rereading a text to his manager twice before sending it, swapping one word out because it could, maybe, possibly read as sharp. They don't show you the exact moment every evening when he finally takes his shoes off at the door and something in his shoulders drops, because for the next few hours, none of that math is required. And still, there's another side of this worth being honest about. The same composure that kept a man like Marcus safe for decades can, over time, turn into something heavier. Solitude that once felt like peace can slowly narrow into isolation. Self-control built to protect him can calcify into a wall he can't quite lower even for the people who've genuinely earned the right to see him without it. Some men like this aren't fine. They're just tired, in a way they stopped mentioning a long time ago to people who stopped asking. So the real question was never whether this kind of quiet strength is good or bad. The real question is where it stops being protection and starts becoming distance. The problem was never his composure. His composure has served him well, more than once, in rooms that genuinely weren't safe for him to be anything else. The problem is when composure becomes the only setting left, even in the rooms where the danger passed years ago. So if you're the one being described right now, if some version of Marcus lives in you, here's what I want you to actually hear. What you built wasn't coldness, it was intelligence, forged early under conditions that demanded it. But it was built for rooms that don't all exist in your life anymore, and it's allowed to rest in the ones that are genuinely safe now. Keep 2 or 3 people close, the kind who'd notice if you went quiet for a little too long, the kind you'd actually call if something went wrong at 2 in the morning. Let them see you without running the calculations first, every once in a while. It won't make you smaller. It might be the first time in a long time that somebody gets to see you at your actual full size. Because maybe that's what people miss when they look at a man standing alone in his driveway, arms crossed, saying nothing to anyone. The sprinkler is still going. The kid on the bike rides past again, and this time, without thinking too hard about it, Marcus lifts a hand, just a small wave, nothing performed, nothing calculated. Something in his shoulders eases before he even notices it happening. He isn't managing how anyone reads him right now. He's just a man watering his lawn at the end of a long day, finally standing somewhere he doesn't have to be anything other than exactly who he is.